Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Barbara and today I'm bringing to you November nonfiction book tag. So, as you might have heard, November is a month for nonfiction books, or November is a month when we are more inspired to talk about nonfiction books. And so I found this nonfiction book tag. Originally it's called Nonfiction on Booktube tag. It's created by Olive from a book Olive. I will link it down below, the original video. And yeah, I just thought I would take part because I love nonfiction and it's November, so. And I also feel like on Booktube we don't talk about nonfiction enough. And most of the booktubers that I follow, they don't tend to read much nonfiction, so I feel like it's always great to talk about nonfiction because it is a very important part of books and the entire book industry, and I just enjoy it so much, and I just felt like it would be a great video because yeah, I love nonfiction. So first question is, I have here a list of the questions, so that's what I'll be looking down. First question is, how much nonfiction do you read? So in the past, I didn't read much nonfiction at all because I always found it boring and it felt like a chore to read this, even though I was interested in it. But at some point, it felt like this is just not that much fun to read. But then I discovered the charm of audiobooks, and that's when I started to read or listen to nonfiction books, and I listen mostly to nonfiction on audiobook. And since then, since I started listening to audiobooks, I usually have about 20%, 15 to 20% of the books are nonfiction that I read. So 1 in 5 approximately, which I think is a lot actually. And this is because I listen to audiobooks while I do dishes, while if I go for a walk, or sometimes on a bus, like commuting to work, or when I do something else, like for example, recent passion is diamond painting. So while I do diamond painting, I will be listening to audiobook. I feel like that's really, really cool. Like I don't have to choose a different podcast every time I listen, or like music or whatever. I just have this one book that I listen to for, I don't know, 10 hours or whatever, how long the nonfiction book is. So I feel like that's really great way. Second question is, what's your favorite subgenre of nonfiction? Now, this is a very difficult question for me because I like different types of books or different types of nonfiction, but one subgenre would be memoirs, especially if they are narrated on an audiobook by the author. So the person is basically telling me their story. And also I love books on environment and books about animals and nature. And so those would be my probably 2 most favorite subgenres. Third book. Do you have a favorite nonfiction book? Now, this is a very tough question again because just to pick one is very tough, but I'm gonna pick one now and then talk about other favorite ones at the end of the video as more nonfiction recommendations kind of thing. But my favorite one would be Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah is my favorite stand-up comic, and he's also a host of The Daily Show in the US, and this show is focused mostly on American politics and just news in general, and he basically gives all this news in different perspective and gives you facts and everything, and he's funny about it as well, which is perfect. And one of the messages from his book, Born a Crime, is basically what can you do in life if you can't laugh about it? When he released a book, a memoir of his called Born a Crime, and he also narrated it on audiobook. I was all in, and that was the first book I ever listened on audiobook because I just absolutely adore Trevor Noah and the way he talks and says jokes and funny stories and everything. That definitely is my favorite book because in this book he talks about his childhood in South Africa, where he was basically a crime because back then when he was born there was apartheid and it was illegal for white people and black people to be in a relationship, and his mom and his dad had him. His mom was black, his dad was white, and so that was illegal in the apartheid, in the system they had in South Africa back then. And so he basically talks in this book about his childhood and how tough it was at times. And then also how he got to the US and all these things. And it's just my all-time favorite book. Next question is, what do you think keeps people from wanting to read more nonfiction? I'm really not sure about this, about other people, because I think different people will have different reasons of why they don't like nonfiction, but I can say for myself why for the longest time in my life, I was like, that's a nonfiction, I'm not interested in nonfiction. And that's because I felt like it was boring and it was a chore for me to just sit down, open a book and read this nonfiction story. That's basically what kept me away from audiobooks for the longest time, because when I sit down with a book, I want to have fun and not read another horrible story from reality. But then I discovered the audiobooks and I just enjoy listening to nonfiction on audiobooks so much, so that just changed my view so much. And today as well, I will not read memoirs or autobiography or these things. I will listen to them. What I do read in physical is usually books about environmentalism and nature and animals, where I can tap what I like and I can highlight and stuff like this. So those books I tend to like read and enjoy and highlight and stuff like that, so I can directly interact with them instead of on audiobook when I can't really come back to my favorite part or something. Next question. Why do you like nonfiction? I love nonfiction because it's a way of learning in fun form, kind of thing. So, for example, if I listen to memoirs, I just learn about this person's life and about society and about how society works for different people, especially if there are people of color, to see life from different point of view, different culture, different country, and it's just very eye-opening oftentimes. Then if it is, for example, nonfiction about environment or nature, I'm very interested in these topics, and then I'm really eager to learn. So I love to read nonfiction because it's really easy way to, again, keep tabs and like come back to it again and again, instead of if it's like just a lecture or a movie, it's much harder to come back to it again. Next question. What is a nonfiction book you read because of booktube? I don't think I've seen many nonfiction recommendations on booktube, but I've been seeing one all the time on Bookstagram, and that was Know My Name by Chanel Miller, and I read that, or I listened to it again. It was narrated by Chanel Miller, again, perfect, and this was absolutely amazing book, one of my favorite nonfiction books ever, and also one of my favorite books this year, because it was so powerful, and it just, after I finished reading it, I was just sitting and I actually needed to record like my reaction to it because it was so raw and so touching. Yeah, I absolutely adore that book. It's so horrifying but so important. Next question. What's the best nonfiction book you've read lately? I haven't read that many nonfiction books lately because there have been some readathons and things like this, so usually nonfiction doesn't fit those prompts all that well. But if I'm to pick one that stuck with me this year, that would be either Know My Name by Chanel Miller, but also two other ones I really love. And that would be A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough. And that's absolutely brilliant book. I listened to it. It is narrated by David Attenborough himself. And I'm looking forward to buy the book, but it's been so expensive. But I really want to buy it and again go through it and highlight it and tab it and everything, so I can like really learn what he has to share, not only listen to it once. So that is absolutely perfect book, and that's basically the, I don't know if same, I haven't seen the documentary, but there is a documentary on Netflix called A Life on Our Earth, which is also directed by David, I think directed by David Attenborough, and it's basically the same thing, I think. So it's absolutely like brilliant book and important to read as well, for us to realize and to connect our minds that like saving nature means saving us. So yeah, that's basically the message of the book, and it also suggests how we can do it. And the second book would be Beneath the Surface, Killer Whales, the Sea World, and Behind the Blackfish, or something like that it's called. And it's written by John Hargrove, and it is again narrated by the author. And John is, or was, a trainer at SeaWorld, and he ever since he was a little boy, he dreamed about working with killer whales. He was fascinated by them and wanted to train with them. And then he managed to do that. And he was one of the best trainers SeaWorld had. And basically this book is about how the killer whales live in the SeaWorld and what is behind the SeaWorld. And basically you learn so much about killer whales and about why you should never visit SeaWorld. And that left so much impact on me. Since then, like, I went and bought some bracelets from some organization that donates money to help the environment and help the nature, help the planet, that they sponsored the research into animals and nature. And yeah, it just gave me this need to do something and to start talking about it. It was also one of the things that inspired me to really run this Green Books for All book club. And yeah, I just feel like I need to talk about it more, and I want to engage more in my life with these kind of things, with this topic. So that was really powerful book for me. Next question. What are some of your nonfiction reading goals? I think 20% of nonfiction is pretty good for me. That is a great goal, actually. I think that 1 in 5 books, or at least 1 book a month to be a nonfiction. What kind of nonfiction videos do you make or do you want to make on booktube? So far I haven't done any nonfiction video. This is my first nonfiction video I'm making. But in the future I definitely plan to work more with the Green Books for All book club, which will not be all nonfiction, but it will be focused on environment and sustainability, which is very nonfiction issue. And yeah, I think I will be able to make more nonfiction videos after that if I will be reviewing the monthly book or things like this. So that's my plan for next year, to do more of these things. Okay, and the last question is, what's your advice for incorporating more nonfiction into one's reading diet? And this is highly individual. My biggest advice is, if you're not already listening to audiobooks, try listen to a nonfiction on audiobook. It helped me so much with getting into nonfiction, and I believe if you don't feel like listening to music at some point, try to listen to some nonfiction audiobook, and you'll see how amazing it is, especially if it's narrated by the author. So yeah, that would be my advice number 1 for sure. Number 2 would be, try to find some books that are about something that you're interested in. So, for example, if you're interested in some person, some celebrity, read their memoir or autobiography or biography. If you're interested in some topic like fashion, food, environment, animals, or whatever your interest is, travel, there is so many amazing books about these topics that are non-fiction. I can't even begin to list all amazing books I found, for example, on travel or on nature and animals. So you can find plenty. If you're interested in something, you can easily find non-fiction books about these things. So that's all for the questions. But then I would like to talk about some non-fiction books that I love, except of the ones that I obviously already mentioned. But then other amazing books that I loved was Becoming by Michelle Obama, narrated by Michelle Obama also, the audiobook. Then we have I Am Malala, which was not narrated by Malala, but if you don't know, Malala is a young woman from Pakistan who started speaking out for girls' rights and girls' rights for education in Pakistan when she was a little girl, and for this she was shot by Taliban. Then she was basically transported to a British hospital to get treated, and she started speaking out more widely about it. Because of this assassination, basically, she became widely famous, and this topic became a worldwide issue, and entire media from entire world were interested in it. And Malala also won Nobel Peace Prize for her work for girls' rights, basically, in the world. First book I want to mention is What Can I Do? The Truth About Climate Change and How to Fix It by Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda is a famous actress, and at the age of around 70, she started really engaging in the fight against climate crisis, and she started organizing marches, and basically she talks about it, about her work. Here you can see all my tabs, what I was talking about before, that I love to have physical copies of these books so I can tab it, and then you'll see like I highlight the stuff that I really feel like is really important and I would like to come back to. Here also we can see in yellow. Yeah, and also 100% of the author's net proceeds from What Can I Do will go to Greenpeace. And Greenpeace is one of the biggest organizations that are fighting climate crisis. So this book was amazing. Another book I really loved was The Future We Choose by Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac. There you see some tabs. And then also highlighted like that. So this book is basically about what can we do to ensure that our future is bright, pretty much. The thing is, this book compares two different futures in 30 years. That either if we don't do anything, how the world will look like, and then if we do the things that we can and that we should, how the world will look like. And then they suggest different things, how to help, what we can do, and yeah, it's a brilliant book that you can learn a lot from. Another book I loved was Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad, and this I listened to on audiobook first, but I loved it so much that I purchased it. And this book can make you very uncomfortable. And I always thought I was anti-racist and I understood what the problem was. But then I listened to this book and some of the things made me so uncomfortable, and some of the things I still don't understand how some of the things are a problem. So I still have a lot to learn, even though I read this and I bought it so I can go through it again, because this is very interactive, and in this book she explains in different chapters different issues with white supremacy and racism, and then in the end of the chapter it says, how does white silence show up? Here are a few examples of white silence in action. And then she lists a couple things that are wrong with white silence, and then there is reflective journal prompts in the end, and there are a couple questions like that. So it says, how have you stayed silent when it comes to race and racism? What types of situations elicit the most white silence from you? So you're basically supposed to sit down and write your thoughts and experiences and what you think about this book. And I think it would be best to talk about this book with someone else and explore how we have supported white supremacy over the years, even though we hate it. So that's, yeah, this is one of the books I really want to read again. And then there are some books that I'm really excited to read in the near future. And one of them is How to Avoid Climate Crisis by Bill Gates. And I heard a lot of negative about this book because it's written by Bill Gates. And if you have so much money, then why don't you do something? Why do you tell other people to do stuff? Which on one side is true. But on the other side, he is very engaged in all these companies and organizations that help environment and fight against climate crisis. And this book is more from the point of view of the bigger corporations. So basically, I haven't read it yet. But I imagine it talks about how we can fight the climate crisis and how we as individuals can help force bigger companies to support the environment as well. So this will be a very interesting book to read. And then there is one more that I can think of right now, and that's Will by Will Smith. I have an audiobook of this, so I'm really excited to listen to that. It's also narrated by Will Smith, so dream team. So yeah, that's what I want to listen to next month when I finally get to it, hopefully. And yeah, that's it. And then another task on this tag was recommend non-fiction booktube channels. And I don't really know any, so I'm just going to go through some channels and try to find other non-fiction channels, and I will tag them down below if you want to check them. And that will be all. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have read any of the books I talked about, let's discuss them, because I love non-fiction books and I love talking about non-fiction books, so I would love to discuss them with you. Let me know if you were inspired to read some of these, or if you have any other recommendations that you think I would love, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to see your recommendations. And yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you would like me to do more non-fiction videos or talk more about these non-fiction books, please let me know. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye!